Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and today we're going to be looking at the case of Marvin Mutch. Was he wrongly imprisoned for murder, or is there just people making much ado about nothing? I had to do that. Anyway, welcome everybody who is in the chat room. I appreciate you being here today. And if you would like to be in the chat room, yes, you can be in the chat room. But it is my live shows are chat are my chat. I can't even say this today. My live shows are chat patron only. It's been a rough couple days, and you all know why. Who have been dealing with the Karen Reed verdict. Very unpleasant. I'll just say this before I go on with my speech on this. Yes, I did put out a 5-part series on the Karen Reed verdict, not on the verdict itself, but my concern over lay juries. And that was my focus on why I think lay juries have problems in the courtroom, not anything against the Karen Reed jury, because they found her not guilty. But I've lost about 300 subscribers. I've probably about at least 1,000 vicious insults toward me because I disagreed with the verdict. And the majority of the people who were upset with me never actually watched the videos, because I was talking about the entire jury system, not trying to attack the jury itself. So it's been kind of unpleasant. So today we're going to talk about a guy who the Innocence Project, interestingly enough, Marvin Mutch, the Innocence Project of California Innocence Project, took up his case and believed he was innocent and spent 41 years wrongly in prison. And I find that kind of amusing on top of the Karen Reed verdict, because hey, if you're supposed to believe the jury 100% and they can never be wrong, why is the Innocence Project saying that jury was wrong? Guess what? Because juries can be wrong. They can. I mean, they may do their best, but they still may come up with what later is determined not to be a good verdict. So we can always argue about that, because there's never going to be a perfect world. And although I want professional juries, I can't say that every professional jury would come in correct either, because that's the way it would go. Now, I believe that professional juries would be more correct than civilian juries because they would have the training. So I would prefer to go with what would work best. So that was my whole thing on why I did the 5-part series on the lay jury system after the Karen Reed verdict. So been just an unpleasant couple of days, shall we say. And but I don't put up videos for clicks or for money. I put up videos for education, and so be it. Anyway, so if you want to be in the chat room during one of my live shows, which are patron-only live shows, please do join Patreon. Link below. It's $5 a month. There are 2 live shows a week. We have a case show like today and a hangout during the week. If you do not want to do that, it's okay. I do wish that you would subscribe to the channel and click the bell for notifications. Check my playlist. All of my videos are public. After the live show is done, about a week later, every one of them goes public. So there's nothing hidden. So I want people to learn. So you don't have to pay my channel to pay me to learn something. I want you to learn anyway. All right. So, and just before I continue with this case, I want to say right here and now, I would ask that there be zero discussion of the Karen Reed case in the chat room or in the comments, because this is not about the Karen Reed case, and that case has made people turn into animals, just vicious animals. And it's really, really sad. And I like to always have a pleasant chat room, and I love to have pleasant comments. Disagreement is acceptable, but be polite. Be interested in education, not in and beating out the other person by, oh, you're wrong and I'm right, or you're stupid and I'm not. That's not something I like to see. So anyway, let's get to this case. I've said hello to most everybody who is in the chat room, although I think a few people might have rolled in since, but let me just check. Oh, I look beautiful. Oh, that's the filter, Sarah. I don't lie about anything, but I will allow a filter to make me look better, just so I don't have to look at myself at the age I'm at. So yeah, so I do cheat, but I admit I cheat. All right. So yeah, don't talk about the Karen Reed case. Yes, it was messy. Let's not go there. Let's keep that out of the chat room. Harper says, I appreciate you're not afraid of having an unpopular opinion. You know, it's very fascinating because the people who've had this unpopular opinion have been accused of being shills for the state, um, which is craziness, because anybody who has had an unpopular opinion on YouTube knows that that is not good for your channel. It is, and it's hard. Not only do you lose subscribers and money, but you also have to put up with a lot of meanness, bullying, which is unpleasant. So nobody chooses the unpopular opinion for, I don't know for what reason. The reason would be because we actually believe that we must speak out on the evidence, and if the evidence points a certain way, or we have an opinion that we feel strongly about, we're willing to go out there. I feel that's ethically correct, that I speak truthfully and let things fall where they may. But yeah, it's a lot of people are very afraid to do that. Even professionals are afraid to do that because the fallout can be pretty terrible. As one woman pointed out, she said, well, you've now ruined your reputation, Pat Brown. Well, probably already ruined my reputation many times by now. So, and I'm still here. So let's see. Okay, so I'm just looking. Oh, you were surprised. Caitlin says, glad you expressed your thoughts. I was surprised you did. I've really kept a low profile on the case. I've spoken on about the case about a few times at different points in time, but I did not do a running commentary on it. That's not what I do anyway. And I really thought hard and long about whether I should talk about the case once the verdict came out. But my the thing that really stuck with me is it wasn't just about I disagree with the verdict, but that I wanted people to understand about my issues with the lay jury system, the civilian jury system, which I call 12 people off a bus stop. Maybe the nicest people in the world, but there's still 12 people off a bus stop with zero training. And to have people with zero training be forced into basically be forced, because they are forced into a courtroom where they then have to spend this time 30 days with all these people who have great training and education pushing all this stuff at them, and they're supposed to, like, on the spot figure out what's right and wrong. And it's insanity, in my opinion. And I don't blame the jury for whatever verdict they come up with, but as they say, both the prosecutor and the defense, it's always a gamble. It's a crapshoot. Well, justice shouldn't be a crapshoot. It should be the best we can make it, even if it's not always perfect. So that's my thoughts on it. All right, let's get to Marvin Mutch. And I said Mulch. What is his name? Now I've forgotten. Oh, it is Mutch. I keep, you know why I said Mulch? Because a lot of times when I've typed his name in to find information, I keep coming up with information on mulch, and gardening. So now I've forgotten his name. Marvin Mutch. Okay, so this is a very tricky case in that I have mixed feelings on it. So I know a lot of you, when I say that he was represented by the California Innocence Project, all of you are probably going, yeah, you think that he's probably guilty because you don't have a lot of faith in the Innocence Project. You think they get out guilty people, which I do. Quite often they get out guilty people. However, when we look at the issue of whether he should have been found guilty or not, whether there was reasonable doubt, I'm on the fence, and I'm going to show you why I'm on the fence. And a lot of the reasons I'm on the fence is because I wasn't in the courtroom, and I could not find very many. I found some documents with the court information or some of the people who were, being questioned in the courtroom. I got some of that, but very little of it. And therefore, I couldn't depend on having all of that solid information. So I'm going to show you two things. One is what happens when you don't have all the solid information, and who is giving out the information. And that's three things. Also, that are certain questions that if were answered, maybe we would have a better idea. So I want to show you where I got my information from. I got it from, where is it? Sorry. Doing so good today. Oh, Lord. Okay, I got my information from these two main things. this one, which I'll link below, is called The Trials of Marvin Mutch. And it is a documentary, and also the website has a lot of other information on it, but not a lot, which is interesting to me because the website is clearly promoting his innocence, and the documentary is promoting his innocence, and yet they seem to leave out a good portion of information, which I would like to know. Hunting Evil by Carlton Smith. I was really annoyed that I ended up paying for this book. I paid $15 for a Kindle version. And I know I owned this book at one time because I recognize it, but I used to have 400 books. And when I moved, I downsized to only my favorite books. I think I tossed that one at Goodwill. So darn, so I had to pay $15. But he has an alternate suspect, which is interesting. And he talks about what happened. I got more information here about some of the things that weren't here. So, but I still feel like there's a lot of information I just simply do not have. And I'm going to point those things out to you. I'm going to point out all my concerns. All right. I just want to read this to you because this was a podcast that was done. It was called A Fight for Freedom by Marvin Mutch. Remember, I'm going to read you a little bit more about his actual history of how he ended up in prison, how he got convicted, and how he fought for his freedom, how Innocence Project got involved, and what happened thereafter. So A Fight for Freedom. So he really did work hard after being in prison all these years to contribute to the community of people who are in prison. Some he thought wrongly, but some rightly, that he wanted to help. Marvin Mutch spent 41 years behind the walls of San Quentin State Prison for a 7-year to life sentence. Not sure that's what that's supposed to mean there. Yeah, life sentence, basically. For a murder committed in Union City, California. The only problem is Marvin didn't murder anyone. His story was so mesmerizing, we edited out most of Sam's questions just to keep him telling the story in his own words. It's an emotional joyride full of twists and turns, corruption, powerlessness, and extraordinary outcomes. Marvin's story is about much more than injustice. It's a story about the resilience of the human spirit. He's an incredible example of how to keep going even when you feel powerless and are up against insurmountable odds. Marvin's spirit was not broken. He co-founded My Brother's Keepers and the Men's Advisory Council, a prisoner advocacy group inside San Quentin State Prison, and continues to be an advocate for justice reform. So this is one of the reasons the Innocence Project really liked this guy, because he's doing so well in prison and trying to help everybody else. They wanted to get him out, and they managed to get him out. They've got him paroled, is what they got him, because he had failed the parole board over and over and over and over again. And I'll explain that in a little bit. But they finally managed to get the governor to write and say, hey, let the guy out. And he got out. So, and where did he get out? Let me just show you what happened after he got out. There's a little picture of him. Okay, here he is. Here he is in his first apartment he's ever had in his life, because he was 18 years old, living with his mom when he was convicted. And here he is in his first apartment. He went out and bought a first cell phone. He never, all these things were new to him because he'd been in prison for 4 decades. So that's kind of amazing. And one of the ladies who got to know him when in the later years of his prison sentence ended up marrying him. So there is a happy moment where they're getting married. And so then he lived outside of prison for, let's see how many years it was. So he was, he went to prison. 1974 was when he was accused of murder and convicted of murdering a 13-year-old girl named Cassie Riley. And that's Cassie, okay? And so at the time, let me just show you a picture of him at the time. So at the time, so he was an 18-year-old young man. He was working as a security guard. And interesting enough, as an armed security guard, private security, it's like for businesses. And he was running around 18 years old with his gun, and which is kind of amazing to me. I mean, it's like, wow, how much, because he spent his time in, he was in a lot of foster homes and in juvenile institutions. So I'm not quite sure why he was handed a gun, because he had quite a lot of issues with the law, shall we say. So anyway, that was him about the time. And then he was accused of this murder, and he was convicted of this murder, which I'm going to go into detail on. But now he's out. So the most recent news on him came out in May, because nobody's really heard about him since he got out. He got out in 2016 after 41 years. And so this is now, where are we at? 2025. So he's been out for 9 years. And in the 9 years he's been out, I don't know what he's been doing. And I looked all over the internet, because you would think that a guy who the Innocence Project has backed to this level and who did get out and people think is innocent, you'd think there'd be some more information. I could not find anything about what his work was, whether he was still married to his wife, what he's been doing, nothing. But for 9 years he's been out. He hasn't been arrested. So he was living, at least as far as we know, a legal life, and not. Again, he says he never committed the crime, and that's what many people believe, and that's what I'll go through is, was he really guilty or not? But if he didn't commit that crime, he spent 41 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit, a murder he didn't commit, gets out, and 9 years has gone by, and he hasn't ended up back in prison. Well, but there's this. So apparently, he just got arrested in May. What did he get arrested for, you ask, after all these years? He got arrested. He's being held on $300,000 bail and faces charges of possession of child pornography, being a convicted felon in possession of a firearm, being convicted felon in possession of ammunition, and possession of a controlled substance while armed. Now, that's interesting. Now, there's some people out there who say he's just being persecuted, but I'm not sure why he would be persecuted at this point in time. He served 41 years. He's in his, how old is this guy now? In his late 60s. He hasn't been arrested in those last 9 years. For the most part, people keep thinking that somehow people are being chased down once they get out of prison, and somebody wants to get them back, or I don't know, maybe the state is angry that he got paroled. No, nobody's going to do that. It's just too much. People have other lives, things to do, more pressing matters than what they would consider a guy who's, paid his dues essentially, and is now out and living a quiet life. What the heck? So that he would be arrested for these things is highly concerning. And to me, I do not believe he was being persecuted. But the question is, what the heck? How did this information come to the eyes of the authorities? And they went in. They're now checking, going through all his electronics. They must have found enough to arrest him, obviously. And I think child pornography thing, you could put that aside and simply say, well, maybe that's a little wishy-washy. Okay, because sometimes people will say, "Oh, something's child pornography." And it's not really, like a bare baby in a bathtub is not child pornography. Not to some guys, it will be, but to most of us, it's a cute baby is in a bathtub, and we don't mind that they're naked, and we're not thinking of them in any kind of sexual way. So I don't know what the alleged child pornography is. I do not know, but I can tell you this: a gun is a gun is a gun. If you're a felon, you can't have a gun, period. Why do you even need one? But okay, let's say you're afraid. You're afraid people are going to come after you for whatever reason. You still can't have a firearm. You can't. It's illegal. And if you want people to believe and trust you that you didn't commit the first crime, that you spent 41 years in prison for, you think that you just wouldn't take the chance of putting a firearm in your house. Now, I don't know whether there's going to be a claim that it wasn't his firearm, that some other person put it in his house, whatever. Then we have the controlled substances. What are those? And that hasn't come forth. I do not know what those are yet. It has been a month since this occurred. 4 weeks has passed by. I've looked for updates, and I have found zero. And I found this is something I find interesting. I found zero in two different directions. One is what's going on with the case. right? Like, why aren't we hearing more? What's happening? But two, the one that concerns me more is, where the hell is the Innocence Project? Because this is one of their poster boys. Why aren't they up in arms? Why aren't they coming out and saying, look, this stuff isn't true. He didn't have this stuff in his possession. Where are they? It's been dead silent from those people. Absolutely zero. And I wonder why they're being so quiet. I mean, do they know it's true? And they can't, like, wow, that's embarrassing. I mean, it wouldn't, and I will say this, it wouldn't be their fault if they truly believed he was innocent, and he still could be, mind you. This guy could be innocent of the original crime, but guilty of the charges against him now. And now some people do not understand that, but that can be true. So, it doesn't make the Innocence Project look good, because most people are looking at this going, child pornography? Wasn't he accused of attacking a 13-year-old girl? Yeah. And there was the girl wasn't raped, but there were sexual overtones to what happened. And I'll explain that in a bit, so that it looked like somebody had some kind of sexual interest in that 13-year-old girl. And that is considered, well, people consider that a child. Child pornography could be including a 13-year-old. Let me say again, the two different areas. Pedophilia are children before they mature. So when talking about a pedophile, that's a guy who likes little kitties, 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 6-year-old, 8-year-old, If you get up to a 13-year-old, that's called ephebophilia. In other words, she's already mature as a, quote, woman. And in many cultures, she's ready to get married. Just not in Western culture. You're not supposed to get married at 13, and it's illegal. So she is a fully developed female, and some girls at 13 are very developed, shall we say. So their interest isn't that they want a child. What they want is an ephebophiliac, I'm not sure how it goes, is they want a young woman, quite young and fresh and all well put together and no wrinkles, just young and innocent and naive and all that thing. You want to be the first, that kind of crap. It's not the same thing as a pedophile. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying it's not the same thing as a pedophile. So those are two different things. So I don't know what the child pornography is he got nailed for, or I take that back, that he's been accused of. He hasn't been nailed yet for that. That he's been accused of the alleged child pornography. I don't know whether it's little kiddies or it's young teens like a 13-year-old. So people would look at that and go, oh my God, if he had child pornography, he definitely was guilty of the original crime. But that is not true. And again, one has to keep a cool head and not jump to conclusions, because he could simply be innocent of the first crime, but still like to look at child pornography when he got out. I don't know. Okay. So that's the state of affairs. He is, as far as I know, got under 300,000. I guess, I don't know if he's bailed out. What is 300,000 on that? I'm looking at this. Yeah. But I don't know where he is, because there's been no updates on that. So I'm going to check some of your comments. I'm going to go to the actual murder of Cassie. And the problem with the murder was there was a lack of physical evidence, really a great lack of physical and direct evidence, which is why some people think that the jury should not have found him guilty. So, well, there you go. Felicity says, hi, Felicity. It doesn't mean he's guilty, but it's not a good picture, particularly alongside the kidnapping of the 13-year-old before the murder. Okay, that's not exactly true. So now this is, but you're not exactly wrong either. One thing I want people to understand, and it makes people so angry, when I bring these kind of things up, just people lose their minds, because I say, a lot of times we just simply don't know the accuracy of the information that we're being fed. And that could be true in the media, and it can be true on YouTube, and it can be true in a court of law. That's why when you're being fed information in the court of law, you've got the prosecution feeding you, you've got the defense feeding you, and then you got their experts feeding you. They're feeding you stuff, and you have to figure out who's feeding you true stuff and who is filling you up with a bunch of crap. How do you know the difference between the two of them? So there was an issue with another 13-year-old. And I'm going to go into that, but you're going to see that I find two different stories on that 13-year-old, and I don't know where the truth lies because I can't find the information. Sarah says, Pat, if a man sexually abuses a girl under 13 for 7 years, do they often age out? Oh, yeah. Well, in other words, will the predator become bored with her? Oh, yeah. If she's got a little sister, rather have a little sister. Thank you very much. Could you just clean the house while I take care of her? Yes, because it's an interest. Or, well, all of us have interest when it people sexual stuff, and that they might like somebody, find themselves attracted to somebody for a particular reason. But let's say they like very thin women, and then the woman gets fat, well, that might be the end of that relationship. Now, if that person loves that person for just that person, and it's like, I love her thin or fat. Well, that's a great guy. But a lot of guys aren't like that. A lot of women aren't like that. It's like, yeah, I'm not attracted to you anymore. I'm attracted to my boss. So yes, indeed. It's a sexual orientation. I don't know what I have, like sex addiction, sexual orientation. I'm always a little concerned about how those are used. Not that how they're used, but that's just me. All right. Let's see. Am I going to see their yucky? Yes. Loretta. It's I mean, if he's innocent, and he didn't, what about this poor woman? She believes he's innocent, and if he was, well, then she didn't marry a child murderer. But now that she's with him, if she's still with him, and I don't know she's still with him, all this information comes out, and it's like, oh my God, who have I married? So always makes a good documentary, though, doesn't it? I'm sure it'll show up at some point. Good point, Delphi. He's been out for 9 years. So this is one of the things that also people don't look at. They might say, oh, he's been out for 9 years and he's been totally clean. How do we know? How do we know what he's been doing for those whole 9 years? He could be committing crime after crime after crime and not been caught. Serial killers can live, an entire lifetime and get caught when they're 60. Didn't mean that until they were 60, they didn't kill anybody, because it turns out that they killed 20 different women. They just were never suspected. So, yeah. I'm on the side of the lovers. I don't know if you're talking about them, but okay. All right. Now, let me get to the case. Now, yeah, I'm trying to figure out how I want to approach this, because the book that I read, and he supposedly goes into more depth than any place else, which he does, but I don't know that he's telling the truth. So here we have a problem. Are we being fed misinformation? And I'm going to show you how he indeed did actually have misinformation in his book. And if you read his book and you go, oh my God, you may not be true. And documentaries do this just as well. So anyway, when he was 18 years old, okay, let me tell you a little bit about his background. Okay, so he's a man. He did not do well as a child, or stuff wasn't done well to him as a child. His father was out of the picture. His mother was a mess. He had a sister, and he was in and out of foster homes and juvenile institutions. He had a history of behaviors that were concerning, and they put this is at the website, the blah, blah, blah. Hold on, I'm trying to find it here. This is at the kqed.org website that I got a lot of these pictures off of, and they're the ones that are very pro his innocence. Okay, so they put this up here, and they talking about his juvenile history. At age 11, using abusive or profane language. Thou, case dismissed, insufficient evidence. Finding he's made a ward of the juvenile court when he was 12. Petty theft from a school teacher, continued on probation. Found inside a hardware store, something, triggered, reprimanded. Theft of a wallet from a purse at age 13. Continual truancy, conflict with some blah, 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 blah. They're very careful to only show you little teeny weeny things. And one of the things it says in the book, let me pull the book up. In the book, it says, hold on, I'm going to my, all right. So it says in his book, okay, I got to find it. He points out here, 25 years later, with so many records destroyed and institutional memories depleted by retirements and similar changes, there's no way to say for sure about a lot of things. He does mention that, shall we say. I want to find, I'm trying to find the claim that was made. Oh, here we go. Supposedly, he says, he lived in two places. Before he lived in the location where the girl got killed, he lived in a place called Livermore, California. They told the detective on the case of the murdered girl that Marvin Mutch had been previously arrested on juvenile charges of battery, burglary, forcible rape, brandishing a weapon, assault with intent to commit rape, and crimes against children, which certainly made Marvin seem like he was right up there with the young John Dillinger. The Livermore officer, however, failed to tell Bist that none of the arrests had ever made it to court, which suggests that either the Livermore police were less than competent in putting away a dangerous felon or that there was little merit to the allegations. He did go through the court system, so I don't know what this guy's talking about. Juvenile records and the way of handling juveniles varies greatly from state to state and jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Sometimes when a juvenile commits some sort of crime, they try to keep him out of the system, and they work to find ways to get him help, get him a better, different home, get him psychiatric help. They do all kinds of things rather than get him convicted. I don't know the validity of anything this guy said, except that if you notice what they're putting here at the website where they want to make sure he looks innocent is the most simple things. Okay, he used bad word. Maybe he stole a pen from a school teacher, and maybe the theft of a wallet from a purse. Maybe that was his mom's wallet, and he didn't really steal it. Or maybe it was a foster mom, and he just looked in her. But they're not mentioning these things: battery, burglary, forcible rape, brandishing a weapon, assault with intent to commit rape, and crimes against children. If he's even accused of those things, he's got problems. He has serious problems. And after he was in prison, he continued to have those serious problems, by the way. Let me find a little bit of where to put it. Here. Is that it? Hold on a second. Yeah, bigger. Okay, so for 15 years, he said he didn't handle things too well in prison. Things like cutting in the food line, refusing to work when ordered, taking food without permission. Now, those are just a few that they happen to show. So for 15 years, he was basically the bad boy in prison. And he said he thought he had to be a tough guy in prison. Okay, since he was in the juvenile system since he was basically 12 years old, in and out of foster homes. He had a crappy life. There's no question. His mother's a whack job and a half. Okay, his mother is clearly part of the problem. His sister also ended up in those situations, and she was considered kind of an incorrigible. And so both he and his sister were a mess, and acting in ways which are not healthy ways. So by the time this girl got killed, in spite of the fact he was now 18, and they say that, and now he was like a perfect citizen. Yeah, okay. And they give him a gun. Go figure. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. But anyway, if you're going to be a mall cop and you don't have a gun, That's different. You're just basically looking for people causing trouble. But to give an 18-year-old boy with the background he had, a gun, I have no clue who did this. That's unbelievable. And he was wearing a uniform, so that gives him a level of authority. And he can walk around. I don't know where the gun was. Oh no, he did have the gun. He could take the gun home. By the way, some armed jobs, you go into the location and you withdraw the gun from a safe, and you have it on you during your 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever you're doing there, 12 hours. And when you're finished with your shift, you go back and the gun goes back in the safe and you return home without the gun. He had the gun on him because when he returned home the day this girl was killed, he actually put the gun on the table. So I have no idea who the frick gave him this job and gave him this gun. That's insane. But he was a troubled teenager and he had behaviors that were concerning. And I do want to read you what his mother said, just so you can hear what kind of mother he has. Let me find the mother thing. Where is it? Okay, mother. She defended her son and said he wouldn't murder anyone. Now I'm going to get to the actual crime, but I want you to hear the background of all this because it's just fascinating. Mommy says, standing in the sunlight to ward off. Hold on a second. It's very tiny, and if I make it bigger, it's blurry. Okay, here we go. Okay, she says, as she's smoking, against doctor's order, because she's been ill a lot. It just isn't his character. He wouldn't murder anyone. A mother knows what her own can do. Well, we all know that a lot of mothers haven't got a clue about their kids or their other husbands or whatever, their brothers or their daughters. I know he couldn't have done this. She was recently released from the hospital. And she said, we're a good family. But your kids have been in and out of foster homes and juvenile institutions. So I'm going to say you're not a good family. You're not a good mother. We're good people. Things like this don't happen to people like us. Well, wait a minute. Things like this don't happen to people like us. But your child is a juvenile delinquent. Maybe both of them. I mean, I don't know what I know that the daughter also had issues, but they didn't say what her record was, so I don't know if she had one. But she was definitely in the system too, and so she says this. Things like this don't happen to people like us. Yeah, the government just comes and takes your children away and puts them in foster homes because you're good people, and things like that don't happen. He had a job, a clean home to come back to, his own girl. He didn't need to go after that girl in the creek, because she was found, dead in a creek. He always had girls. He had so many girls chasing him. I had to disconnect the telephone because they were driving me bugs. Why? He had women older than you or me after him. So now all the moms of the neighborhood also wanted to sleep with him. This thing in the creek. Not the girl. The girl wasn't the thing. I don't think she was trying to say this. She means the crime. This thing in the creek was done by someone on dope or someone who needed a girl because, that's what sex offenders, they need girls. So they can't pay for them, I guess. So they have to rape and murder them. Or someone hanging around down there. Well, guess who hung around down there? This guy. I told them they ought to be looking for this one who did it because my son didn't. I'll stop there with her. Oh my God, she's a winner. Anyway, now let me see if I can tell you what happened with the sister. I just want to see what her background was here. The sister. Last second. Let me find the other sister one, because I think there's a bunch of crazy stuff with her too. Okay, Valerie, that's his sister. This would be Valerie. This is Valerie Mutch, and she was 16 years old at the time. She was ordered held at Juvenile Hall yesterday following a hearing in juvenile court. She collapsed and told police she had taken drugs with the intention of ending her life because of conflicts in her home. She was being held as incorrigible, according to juvenile authorities. And then she refused to return to her home with her wonderful mom. And so she was treated at Fairmount Hospital. She tried to kill herself during this whole thing because she actually reported him to the police. So in other words, he wasn't exactly a healthy young man. He wasn't. And the case that was mentioned about the 13-year-old girl was a case that happened 4 months prior, where a young man, looking sort of like him, pulled a knife on a 13-year-old girl and tried to sexually assault her, and she escaped. And she, at some point, said, I think it's this guy named Mutch. And then they did a photo layout of 6 people, and she pointed him out, and they brought him in. And now the claim is that nothing came of that because the police didn't believe her story, or didn't, it wasn't him. So nothing came of it. But I don't know if nothing came of it because he got arrested for the other crime. So if it was him and the other 13-year-old, the other crime, you kind of wonder, don't you? You got 4 months apart, 2 13-year-olds. Now, there was also another one, the forcible rape thing they were talking about, that he supposedly didn't go to court for, was I think it was at some kind of foster home. A couple guys or 3 guys, I don't know. There was some girl supposedly that they attacked sexually, and he was supposedly part of that group. Again, I can't find the information on it, so I can't tell you what's true and what isn't true. But he had two times before this murder of the 13-year-old girl that he was looked at as a person who was involved in a sexual assault of a teenager. So, according to Mommy, they're great people, a great family, and nothing like this should ever happen to them, except that it keeps happening. Lightning keeps striking this guy over and over and over again. So that makes you wonder, could he have committed this crime? When he became a suspect, there was a good reason he became a suspect. Now, the tricky part in this, and the book that I was referring to he has an alternative suspect, and you're going to see that it's an interesting alternative suspect because at the same time that this case went down, the young girl had had a boyfriend for 2 weeks because they're 13-year-old teen. I think it was when she was 12 or something. She had like a 2-week boyfriend, and they just nothing happened between them. They just like, oh, it's my boyfriend, that kind of thing. And this character didn't know her, and he was in high school at the same grade as she was in. And his name was this I don't know how to pronounce the name, James DeVeggio, and he turns out to be, along with his partner, he abducted teenagers, sexually tortured them, the 2 of them together, sexually assaulted, not so much torture, but well, maybe they did, but anyway, they sexually assaulted these female victims, and one of them ended up dead on the side of the road. So so this poor girl, apparently, this girl here, she's only 13 years old, and she was a 2-week girlfriend of a guy who later in life turned out to be a serial sex predator. Now, if that guy was a serial sex predator later in life and killed the girl, which he's been convicted of. I mean, there's a bunch of movies and stuff documentaries done on them, so they're all out there. Killer couple type thing. If he did that later in life, I'm going to say that, to be fair, this guy was a psychopath when he was a teenager. There's no question in my mind he was a psychopath as a teenager who then went on to commit sexual predation. So that he would have those ideas when he was this age. I think he was 14 when she was 13. I can't deny that. I have no proof he is a psychopath because the things he supposedly did weren't proven, or they were, I don't know, because I wasn't there. So maybe the police know way more and they're like, yeah, he definitely was the guy that went after the girl with the knife. If he went after the girl with the knife, he's a psychopath and a sex predator. If he was involved in other sexual assaults, he's a sex predator and a psychopath. But I can't prove that. All I can know is that he did some little bullcrap crimes. And I'm not going to say, hey, some teenage boy who took a wallet out of somebody's purse is a psychopath and a sex predator. I can't go there. So the other guy, other suspect who was in school with her, definitely was a psychopath and a future sex predator. Him, don't know. So a lot would have to do with today whether we find out that he actually did have child pornography. But I don't know that that's true because it's just alleged. And I also can't say that, well, I would say that at his age, if he was involved with child pornography and was looking at that stuff, and again, I don't know what they mean by child pornography because there are some guys who go online and they'll go to what's called Almost Legal. There's these websites called Almost Legal. And the idea of them is they get girls who are above 18 years old and above, but look 13. And they call them almost legal, but yet they actually are legal, but they're just pretending that they look young for their age. So the guys that like those ephebophile guys look at the young girls and find that exciting. Now, if they know it's a legal site, if they know that the girl really is over 18, even if she looks younger, I don't want him around my granddaughter, but I can't say that's a crime. I can't say that if he thinks just because he likes them looking young doesn't mean that he's committing a crime. Now, some of those sites, just to tell you the truth, even if they say they're almost legal, they might not be. Just because somebody says that from Romania doesn't mean that it's true. So a lot of that gets real questionable. But at the time, I can honestly say the other guy 100% was a psychopath and a sex predator at some point in his life. And I can't prove that with him. So did he actually kill this girl? So we're going to get to that now. I'm going to go to the crime stuff about the actual crime. Just checking some of your comments. I did not say the woman was 13. She's young. She's a teenage girl, 13. Um, so anyway, okay, I'm going to go to the actual case. Tell you how it went down. I'm going to go to the book, which I say is questionable in its details, but so is every place else. All right, so this is supposedly what happened. All right. It was late September 1974. Keep in mind that we're talking about, this is very important for something later. It's September and it's California. Cassie Riley was 13 years old, about to be 14. She and her father, Kenneth Riley, and her little brother, Kenny, had been living on San Juan Court in Union City about 9 months with her stepmother, Grace, and Grace's daughter, Tammy, who was 12. Even at 13, Cassie's life had had its share of tragedy. Her own mother had died in a car wreck in 1966. Her father had married the former Mrs. Moody a few years later, and now the combined families lived together as one. Cassie had briefly been Jimmy DeVeggio's girlfriend, so that's the guy that turned out to be a psychopathic sex predator. As often happens with young teenagers, the relationship only lasted a few weeks, and now in the fall, both Cassie and Jimmy DeVeggio were freshmen at Union City's only high school, James Logan. Okay. On the afternoon of September 24th, Cassie came home on the bus from school around 2:30 p.m. 2 days earlier, she had had a tiff with her stepmother about a boy she met at school. The pair had words, with Grace telling Cassie that if she didn't like the rules of the house, she could always find someplace else to live. Yeah, the usual teenage annoying stuff, which I don't think is highly important in this case. Around 3:40 on the afternoon of September 24th, Tammy, the sister, came home from classes from the middle school. On her way through Casa Verde Park. Okay, Casa Verde Park is where all of this goes down. Okay, so you have Casa Verde Park here. Casa Verde Park. Let me show you a picture of the park. Okay, here. So this is Casa Verde Park. San Juan. Where does she live on San Juan Street? Let me think. Let me look back here because I thought it was she's on San Juan Street. Let's see. Okay, hold on. Where is it? Okay, I'm trying to find that. I thought that I just read something about San Juan Street. Oh yeah, there it is, San Juan Court. She'd been living at San Juan Court. So there's San Juan. I don't know if it's San Juan Court, but you see at the bottom, San Juan. But you see, she can easily go to the park. And then there is a trail that says going to the stores. So if you're in the park, you might go down that trail over to the Shell gas station, and up there you'll see the Quick Stop Market, Mobile Gas. So she could also take Santa Maria. She wants to go to the supermarket to get some snacks or whatever she wants to get. But that's the basic thing, the basic layout. And if you see, there's a creek there, the Alameda Creek, and then you see all the little trees. So essentially, that's where her body was found, in there somewhere. Okay. All right, so she comes home at 2:30 p.m. And then at 3:40 on the afternoon of September 24th, Tammy, the sister, goes through Casa Verde Park. Tammy saw her stepsister Cassie on the grass of the park with a boy she didn't know. Cassie invited her stepsister to sit down with them, but Tammy didn't stay long. She wanted to get home to get dressed because her father was coming to take her out to dinner. Tammy's own 13th birthday was 5 days away. Tammy left Cassie with the boy in the park. Okay. About 10 or 15 minutes later, Cassie also came home. So now we supposedly have Cassie at home. So Cassie's been in the park, hanging out with the boy, and now she's home about 4 o'clock-ish. It appears she did not go inside right away because several neighbors later were called, seeing her lying on the grass in front of the Riley home on San Juan Court. And mind you, there's a bunch of witnesses here, and a lot of their stories are like, not matching, and you're like, huh? And some of the reasons are because by the time the police get to people, that it's been a few days. And I don't know why everybody thinks everybody remembers anything. Because, first of all, I have a crap memory and always had a crap memory. So, you asked me, oh, let's see, what day are we? Sunday. So, Pat, what did you do on Friday? I have to work hard at it to think exactly what I did on Friday. Oh, I went to art class. So what did you do before art class? Well, probably work, but do I remember exactly that I did? I'm not sure. After art class, what did I do? I went to the pool on the way home. I did do that. Then I came home. Did I stop any place? Oh, the only reason I know I stopped someplace? Now, this is also important. When you look at why people remember things because something significant happened on that day to them, not to somebody else, but to them. When I got into my Mazda Miata coming out of the parking lot, my foot went straight to the floor. I'm like, what the hell? On the clutch. I'm like, what the heck is this? And I found it difficult to get into first gear. I'm like, oh crap, this isn't good. I was driving home and I was driving along and I felt like when I put my foot on the brake, my brake felt soft. I mean, my car stopped, but it just felt off, and it was a lot of traffic, so I kept having to hit the brake. And then I decided, well, there's something wrong with this car. Maybe I should just grab some groceries. So I went to Giant, came back out, and the first time I wish I pulled in backwards because when I got in the car, I could not get the car into reverse. And I looked at the car across from me and I said, oh, God, Lord, I hope they're going to be finished with their shopping soon because I may have to sit here till that car leaves so I can go forward. And then I fought with it and fought with it and fought with it. I finally got it into reverse, and I was able to make it home. And by the way, yes, my son has come over to look at the clutch. But I have all that information on Friday. But if I go back to Thursday, I'm screwed. There's nothing significant. Well, I did my show on Thursday. But, things come back to you sometimes. But the problem is what time things happen. Did you see that person on that day, or did you actually see that person the day before? Things can get foggy, and you can convince yourself, oh, yeah, I saw that person. When maybe you did see that person, but not at that time or on that date. So you have to be very careful about witness stuff, because people always say you got to be, witnesses. Don't base everything on that. But anyway, so she supposedly, some people saw her lying on the front lawn, and then both Tammy and Cassie's little brother Kenny had the impression that Cassie was sad that day, whether from her tiff with Grace the day before or for another reason, which wasn't made clear. Sometime after 4 p.m., Cassie went inside the house and talked to Tammy, who was getting ready to have dinner with her father. Cassie was hungry. She asked Tammy to loan her some money so she could go to the Quick Stop Market. That's up at the top on the right, Quick Stop Market, a nearby convenience store at the corner of Santa Maria Drive in Alvarado. Tammy gave Cassie all she had, 16 cents. Wow, okay. This was a long time ago. I don't know what you get with 16 cents. I was like, wow. At about 4:40 p.m., Cassie set off for the store about a 10-minute walk away. 10 minutes? 10 minutes, really? Okay, I guess it could be 10 minutes. All right. She's going to the store. And she's got 16 cents. Hopefully she had some extra money. Maybe she can put it together, come up with something. Okay, so as this author points out, after this, accounts of events become somewhat murky. And this is the problem. There's different sightings, different claims, and which one is true. A clerk at the convenience store later told police she had seen Cassie in the Quick Stop between 4:55 p.m. and 5:15, which seems like an extraordinarily long time for a hungry 13-year-old to decide how to spend 16 cents. The same clerk also told the police she'd seen Cassie at the store between 5:15 and 5:30 p.m. So which was it? Now, if she left her house at 4:40, I'm going to go with the earlier one. She should have arrived there by 4:50. Unless she stopped someplace. And again, we don't know that she did or didn't. Now, how well can we believe the convenience store clerk? Well, she does probably know some of the kids in the neighborhood, so maybe actually knows who they are, and knows them by name, recognizes them. But if she's busy, does she really know what time it is? Is she distracted? So this is stuff we don't know. We do know probably Cassie went to the store. Now, another witness, a Union City police cadet, said he'd seen Cassie at that store that afternoon. And a few minutes later, that she was crossing Alvarado Niles Road, presumably on her way home. So where the heck is that road? Okay. See, Alvarado Niles, that's the big road from left to right. So that would be the big road. She's just crossing that, going toward her house. All right. He says, this is a police cadet. The girl the cadet thought was Cassie was talking to a dark-haired man in a brown uniform type shirt. Now, mind you, he's got a uniform for work. As the cadet drove through the intersection, he saw the man, not necessarily him, but the man, that he thought might have been Hispanic, walking west on Alvarado Niles Road toward a small tidal drainage swale, Alvarado Creek, that paralleled the road. So he's claiming that he saw the guy then walk along the creek, essentially. He says that she talked to, she was talking to the guy. Now, mind you, Cassie, she's a young teen. She's a high school girl, and those were the days when kids walked a lot to stores and things, and they probably knew a lot of people in their area, and they're willing to talk to people. So that she talked to this guy in a uniform, I don't doubt the cadet. I don't think the cadet is making that up. All right. But the cadet also told the police he'd seen the girl at the store between 3 and 4 p.m. Further, the cadet had previously worked at the store and knew the clerk was working there when Cassie came in, and the clerk said she hadn't seen the police cadet at any time that day. So Did he see? So here's what I think happened with the police cadet, because here's where people went. By the time somebody says, "Do you know this girl?" and she's been killed, and the person starts thinking back in time, they may confuse one day with the other. I don't know if that girl. That's one thing. I'm going to talk a lot about missing information. One of the missing informations is, how often did Cassie go into the store? If the woman behind the counter knew Cassie, maybe Cassie went to the store a lot. Maybe she was there every day. So maybe the cadet did see her in the store talking to some guy in a uniform, which could be him, but the day before. And that's really important when you're looking at a case, because if Cassie did talk to him a day before, then maybe she was familiar with him and wasn't scared of him and would go someplace with him, even though she was 13 and he was 18. So that's important to know, that she may have familiarity with this guy, and she's not like scared of him or anything. And he says, "Hey, come on." And they go, so that's important to know. So even if he didn't see her that day, maybe he did see her the day before. That's what he remembers, or she remembers. I think it's actually a she. No, that's what he remembers. All right. So then there was another sighting. Two other witnesses, students Joyce and Gina, were on a bus coming into Casa Verde tract the afternoon around 5 p.m. and may have seen Cassie Riley in the company of a boy neither girl recognized. It was just across on the quick stop. They knew it was her because they went to school with her. And she said, "Look, there's Cassie." And Joyce pulled the bus window down and yelled out, "Hi, Cassie," but the girl thought that Cassie made no response. The boy with her had long hair down to his shoulders and his back to the bus. Those two girls end up giving two different descriptions. One that he's in whatever shirt, and the other one said he was in a uniform with an emblem like this on the shoulder, which his uniform did have, by the way. So anyway, then about a half hour later, okay, this is another sighting. I want to give you all the sightings. At almost the same time, two elderly Fremont women, probably not as elderly. Now that I'm in that category, really pisses me off. Two Fremont women of whatever age. Why do they have to say elderly? Is that important? Sisters-in-law were visiting one of the women's sons at St. Louis Court in the Casa Verde tract, one street away from the Riley house. Both saw a young man get out of a blue older model sedan, which is what he had, and start walking toward the creek area. About half an hour later, one of the women saw the man return to his car and drive away. At about 5:33 p.m., a Union City police officer, Joyce Hornbein, was on parole in that tract, and she saw a 1961 light blue Lincoln Continental with a dent in the front fender parked near the corner of Santa Maria Drive and San Luis Court, Santa Maria Drive and San Luis. So you can see it's right there across from the Shell gas station. She saw him parked there, this vehicle parked there, and noticed it was illegally parked too close to the corner. And she thought this might be a car that was involved in a crime. So she wrote down the license plate number, and then she looked away. And when she looked back, the car was gone. But she followed this guy. She found the car again. And she started past the Lincoln, going in the opposite direction. She got a brief look at the driver's face, and the driver seemed surprised to see her, and mouthed the word she thought amounted to to himself as she passed. She planned to pursue the Lincoln, but then a dispatcher came with another call, so she went on her way. Okay. So somebody else thought they heard a blood-curdling scream, but that would be at 6:30. Then somewhat behind their house. That's what they said. So, okay, so Cassie didn't come home. Dad, they reported her missing. Then Dad went to look for her. He didn't find her till the next day, and they found her in the water. And the police he backed up because he knew he could see she was dead, and he backed away. And the police came in and it seems like a pretty good job of the crime scene, in my opinion. So now, how did he come into the picture is the question. Well, let me read you basically about what happened with her. Let me get this straight. Cassie had been the victim of a weird sexual attack. Her blue jeans, still fastened at the waist and zipped up, had been pulled down and bunched around her ankles. Her purple short-sleeved sweater top was pulled up, as was her brassiere. Someone had ripped off her panties and thrown them to the side a short distance away. The Schwab, the officer, whatever, noticed that there was some blood on Cassie's face and on her arm, as well as a small pool of blood underneath her. A portion of her body was caked in a thin coating of dried mud. Foliage from the creek was in her hair and on her midsection. A white foamy substance was at her mouth. But the strangest thing was the way Cassie's body was left on her back, with her head down near the water, her feet together higher up on the bank. It looked as if she'd been in the water, then pulled out, turned over, and left with her head lower than her feet. And there were a bunch of shoe prints around and what appeared to be a track of a bicycle in that area. She was drowned and beaten and drowned, and not sexually assaulted. So there was no obvious rape, but obviously with the clothing pulled around the way it was, it was a sexual homicide, in my opinion. Now, some will say it wasn't a sexual homicide, just an angry person who was pissed off at her. And so he killed her and then staged this thing. I personally think there was a sexual component in it. All right. So at any rate, they did get some, let's see if I got this picture here. Okay, there are some footprints, and these are going to be very interesting. Her footprint was, hold on a second. What a picture of her footprint. Where is it? Hold on. Dang. Know where it went to. Okay, so anyway, she had a pair of tennis shoes on that matched see where it says CR. That's her footprint, and it was this very specific type, and it matched exactly the tennis shoe on her foot. But on top of it, what appeared to be on top of it was another tennis shoe. Okay, a Converse All-Star, and fairly new. Her one was Keds, and this was a fairly new because it didn't have a lot of wear on it. So they had a really good. They took their pictures, and they did everything they could to make sure they had the proper information they needed about the shoe to go to court and to match it to somebody else. They have never matched that Converse All-Star thing. Now, it would seem that the person who killed her was wearing Converse tennis shoes. Although that's not absolutely true, and this is where you have to keep that in mind. It is possible that that she could have been with somebody and made those footprints, and they went away, and then she came back and got killed. It's possible that somebody else came by, saw her put their foot there, and then freaked out and ran away and said, I'm not going to say anything. You got possibilities, but the most likely one is that was the footprint of the killer. The problem is they never found a shoe with him. I want to explain that to you. So now, the reason he came into view at all was because his own sister basically ratted him out, Valerie. So what happened was they put out this, the newspaper called the Argus, put out this thing that says, we're looking for this guy, and that we're looking for a guy that looks like this, that was driving this kind of vehicle. And she says, oh my God, that's my brother. So she called the police. Because that's actually pretty decent of her, I'll have to say. Now she regrets it because she thinks, she claims now that she thought he was a witness, and that's why she called the police. But I find that interesting because a little bit of time had passed, and he never came home and told her he was a witness to anything of any sort. He didn't even seem to talk. He never talked about the girl to her, as far as I know. So she's going to the police. She didn't go to her brother and say, hey, dude, what's up? She went to the police. She lived with him. Why would she go to the police except that she thought he was capable of committing the crime? Or that she really hated her brother and just wanted to stab him in the back. I don't know which one it is, but she didn't even talk to him first. She went straight to the police. mother hated her for that. She said, "You're a liar" in court. And that's why she took the overdose, because she was like, and she got out of the house. But she turned her brother in by saying, "Hey, that looks like my brother. He has a car like that." And then the story goes that they went to her house and they found, let's see, where are we at here? And they got her story. Hold on, I gotta find it. Okay, here we go. So they come to his house and they talk to Valerie, and 3 officers then made a search of the house and located a wad of papers that Valerie identified as belonging to Marvin. The papers included several Union Oil Company credit card receipts signed by an employee of Hayward Patrol and a number of other scraps of paper. The paper looked as if once been wet, the ink had run, and the pieces were stuck together to one another. Valerie told the detectives that her brother had come home either shortly before or possibly after that day. Okay, so here, now mind you, I'm a little cautious with this author because I don't think he's accurate, and I don't think he necessarily tells the truth because he's really into the other suspect. Okay, so he's really, the story that he wrote is about the couple, the murderous couple. So he brings this in because he's trying to say, hey, maybe this guy killed Cassie, which he could have, So he puts this story in. I'm not sure how much work he did to get real accurate information. So he says that she either before or after that day. So now, mind you, again, as I pointed out, sometimes you don't remember really well. So Cassie could maybe not remember what day this all happened on, because the girl gets killed. On the day the girl gets killed, she's not found the day she gets killed. That she's found the day after. I don't know why there's no talk in the house. I mean, this whole thing is weird to me. A schoolgirl gets killed right in your neighborhood, and nobody says anything. And then you got this issue where your brother comes home with wet clothing and muddy clothing, and you don't know what day it was. So I kind of believe she knows what day it was. And I'm going to prove to you why probably it was that day. So anyway, his security guard uniform was wet and streaked with mud, as were his pants. Marvin had stripped off his shirt and had given it to her to wash. But he can't do his own damn wash. Not before taking the papers from his breast pocket and putting them on the top of a roll-top desk in his living room. Now, they're here. Why are they wet? Now, I'm sure it does rain there, but I don't know. I'm trying to remember if it's Southern California or Northern California, but, how often it rains in California is always questionable. So, but was he out in the rain and the rain struck the pocket, or was he involved in something that included pushing somebody's face into the water, which is why things got soggy? And they also found, by the way, some plant materials in between the papers from that match what was in that stream. So that's something to keep in mind. All right. So Valerie told, okay, that's it. She put them in this roll top desk, and that's where they were. Valerie told the detectives that Marvin seemed nervous, excited when he arrived. Marvin told her, she continued, that someone had taken his keys and had thrown them in a mud puddle, and that he had fallen trying to get them back. Marvin made a joke about it. Now, what? Someone took his keys and threw them in a mud puddle, and then he fell in the mud puddle trying to retrieve them. Are we in monsoon territory in southern India? I mean, seriously, it's a mud puddle. You're going to fall in the mud puddle on your face, try to retrieve your keys. And all I can say is this. I know a lot of psychopaths who, when they try to tell it, they're trying to explain away something. It's the stupidest story you ever heard. You're like, what? Some of you know that one of my first cases I was involved with was a person who actually rented a room in my house, and a girl was killed between his girlfriend's house and my house, and she was sexually assaulted, raped, and murdered, and thrown in a stream the same exact way. And he arrived home at my house. He actually was on the path that night that she was killed. He admitted to it. and he threw away all his clothing. He said he didn't even wash his jeans. He threw them away. And I said, why would you do that? And he said, well, I don't like the way they dry after they get wet. I'm like, anyway, he threw away his tennis shoes, his jeans, his shirt, which was shredded, and was mud in there from the stream. And I mean, that's a long story. And one day it's in my book, but it's a very convoluted story. And I'm still waiting to get a FOIA request on that case. So anyway, when I asked him why his stuff was wet, because there was a path next to the stream. I said, why would you, what the heck happened to you? And he said, well, it was getting dark. And therefore I decided to cross across the stream to get up to the main road because I didn't want to walk down the path through the park. Because this guy who thought he was a ninja and was 200 and some pounds and a big dude was scared of walking down the path in the park suddenly. So his story was stupid. The police thought his story was stupid. And this guy's story is stupid. So you got a guy who's claiming that he fell in a puddle trying to get a pair of keys. Now, that's not the only story he's told. And this is where the problem comes in. So then Marvin made a joke about it. He said, then he took a shower. Then he went out. He left his boots behind in the bathroom. She noticed Marvin's hard leather boots had tiny flecks of mud on them. Over the next 2 weeks, she said they continued to be nervous and he didn't want to go to the quick stop market alone because he said that police were harassing him. And when I looked at his writings, they found there included poems and stuff about witchcraft. Okay. However, okay, now here's where the big problem comes. So he claims he got wet because his keys fell in a puddle. Okay. They looked through the house for a pair of those tennis shoes, the basketball shoes, but they didn't find any because this is huge. I mean, in a way, the only physical evidence they had, literally the only physical evidence they had was that shoe, that print, that was it. The rest of it, they didn't have DNA. They didn't have anything else. You go with circumstantial evidence and that darn shoe, and the shoe was not in the house. When asked, Valerie Mutch said her brother didn't own any sneakers. He only had 2 pairs of shoes and both were made of hard leather. So he basically, I don't know what kind of hard leather shoe they were, but he, to I guess go with his at least one of them would go with his uniform because he's going to be uniformed to go to work. You don't wear tennis shoes. You're going to wear some regular leather shoes. And he supposedly had a second leather shoe. She said he did not own any tennis shoes. I want somebody to tell me what's wrong with this statement. Because this just stuck out to me a lot. So what's the problem with this statement? Taylor says, I hate when my keys fall in a puddle and I get soaked and need someone to wash my clothes for me. Don't you? Yeah. So what's the problem with the tennis shoes that any of you can come up with? Oh, well, this is an interesting question. Well, guys are stupid, so they could be playing around and somebody grab his keys and chuck them. I don't object to that, but I don't have any details. Again, I would like details from all the police interviews as to where this story came from. Thank you. Liz Huff, what teenager wouldn't have a sneakers for his day off? It's California. It was September. Are you going to tell me this guy who's 18 years old is going to walk around in a pair of shorts and some leather shoes all summer long? Get out of here. That is ludicrous. Ludicrous. So nowhere do I see any information in this book that anybody asked the question, seriously, do you walk around and never have tennis shoes on? I would ask every one of his friends, have you ever seen him in tennis shoes? It makes and by the way, these are basketball shoes. You can buy basketball shoes and they can be, you just use them for whatever you use them for. But there was basketball courts at this park. Did he ever play basketball over there? If he went to play basketball over there, did he play basketball in his leather shoes? I mean, he would be mocked. First of all, everybody would know that he would be mocked to the ends of the earth if he were walking around in leather shoes with his shorts on. And I can't believe that in California, this guy was wearing jeans every day of his life. But where are the interviews? And one of the problems I find with the Innocence Project and this whole story about him, the trials of Mutch, nobody goes into these details. Where the hell are those details? When you're saying this person's innocent, wouldn't you want to prove something there? But, a lot of times they'll leave the information out because the information would not be beneficial. So therefore, it's simply not included. But that was my big question. And some people say, where's the red flags in certain cases? That was it. Where the hell are his tennis shoes? Now, he did have some leather shoes that had some mud on them. There was no evidence that a shoe like his was at the location of the stream. So there is a conflict there. I mean, he's muddy. He's wet everywhere from falling in a freaking puddle. And then he goes home and he's all nervous and all kind of acting weird. But where are his tennis shoes? Because if that were true, why aren't his tennis shoes in the closet? Now, some people, when they go to work, they take a separate pair of shoes with them because they might, after work, want to change out of those shoes and put a different pair of shoes on. Let's say they want to go play some. I'll get you what his statement is in a minute. But they might do that. They might have, they take a second pair of shoes with them because they've been in those darn hard shoes all day long. Now they're getting off and they just want to go hang out. I don't know if they'll still, they could change their shirt and not be wearing the uniform anymore. They could change their entire clothes. They could bring a little, they could bring some shorts with them and after work, just change out. We don't know. But I don't buy that he doesn't have a pair of tennis shoes. I think that is just, Taylor says, seems like the evidence is minimal. This is true. That this guy seems to be up to no good. Not that that's good enough to convict, but I don't like him. Okay, this is the point being whether he committed the crime or not, whether it's proven or not. And that's why I say I'm actually on the fence on this because I don't know. I don't know what they presented at the trial. That they found him guilty. There was never an appeal. That's really rare. I look for appeals because I thought if this guy was 18 years old and the evidence was this weak, that there was no absolute witness to the crime, that he didn't have the tennis shoes that matched, and just that there is circumstantial evidence that puts him in the area and has a sister say this stuff. Is that enough to convict him of a homicide? I don't think so because there's that issue with the tennis shoe and that other creepy dude. Now, the other creepy dude, by the way, I don't know that he was even anywhere around there. I don't know if he's an alibi. Again, you would think that that would be pushed hugely because this guy turned out to be a serial predator and a murderer. You would think that the Innocence Project would nail that guy to the wall. They should say he didn't have an alibi, but they don't. They should say his foot matches the exact. They said he had size 11, but I don't know if that's very vague about whether what the shoe size was. When they cast this, they even cast the damn shoe. So I don't know how they don't know what size it is. And that's really vague information. I don't know whether his foot did fit the exact size of the shoe and the other guy's didn't. I don't know. So that's the problem. So I don't know this other guy, creepy as he is, the serial rapist / murderer. I don't know whether he had just a solid alibi, and so that's why the police just said the hell with him. He doesn't, he didn't have anything to do with it. Just because he was in the same class as the girl and he's a psychopath doesn't mean he was there that day and committed the crime. It also doesn't mean he was there that day and committed the crime, except that he was there that day. And so that's what I'll get to next. All right, so they didn't find this shoes. Okay, now this is where I have issues with the author. Still, the detective thought he had enough to arrest the person who'd killed Cassie Riley. Here was a suspect who'd probably been in the area the day she died. And what they mean by area, they mean the entire area, like, just in the town. He worked nearby, whatever. And apparently got soaked, had a possible track record of accosting young females, and who'd become nervous after Cassie's death. This mostly vague stuff is accurate. The clincher was the patch on the sleeve of the Hayward Patrol uniform. Valerie said Mutch wore the shirt constantly, and the patch was blue and gold, just like the one described by witnesses Hancock's and Glore. So the one of that girl One of the girls said, I don't think both of them did, that they saw this emblem with a guy who was with her, which is that's pretty good information, but not, again, exact proof, because even if he was seen with her at point A, doesn't mean he was with her at point B. So anyway, and this car was seen in the area. His uniform was seen in the area. Generally speaking, he was seen in the area, but was he with her when she was murdered? Now, get this is where it gets interesting. Almost from the outset, Marvin admitted that he'd been in the area of the creek on the day that Cassie Riley had last been seen. He was in the area of the creek. Now, let's look at the picture of the creek again. All right. If you were on Santa Maria, you'd be in the area of the creek. If you were on Alvarado Niles Road, you'd be in the area of the creek. If you were on San Luis, you'd be in the area of the creek. If you were taking that trail from the park back over to the main road, you'd be in the area of the creek. So he's admitting to being in the area, which is a lot of people were in the area. He was admitted to being in the area of the creek on the day Cassie Riley had last been seen, and even that he might have seen her among other people in the area. Okay, so when I was saying, it's after school, it's a nice day, people are wandering around, I saw a bunch of different teenagers, I might have seen Cassie. Marvin told the detective that he'd lost one of his hubcaps in the creek, and he'd gone down into the small channel to look for it. Wait a minute. Wasn't the reason you got muddy because somebody threw your keys into a puddle? Suddenly now your hubcap is in the stream, the actual stream, not a puddle. So now he's come up with an excuse for why he was in the stream, which would account for the muddiness of him. It would account for the vegetation that was in between his papers and his pocket. Although I don't know why, if you're looking for a hubcap, your shirt ends up in the stream. Or why are you leaning over that? Oh, you leaned over that much. You didn't say fell in the stream like he did in the puddle. No, so he should be. Why the hell is this hubcap in the stream? Did he see it roll off the car and rolling down in the stream? I mean, how the hell? What? Okay, so anyway, but that's his excuse for now being in the stream as opposed to a puddle. And oh my goodness. So yeah, he's in there, and he'd gone down into the small channel to look for it. All right, so that's his story. All right, that he admitted being in the area and admitted to being in the stream, but he did not see Cassie. That's what this author says. Now, let's see what the show said, the documentary. The documentary says this. So this is his lawyer. He had been seen in this park. Okay, now I want to point out the scene thing. One of the reasons people admit to certain things is because they were seen. Let's say he was actually guilty of this crime. If he thought nobody saw him, he would say, he would never give that stupid story about the puddle of the stream. He would never say he went to the stream, especially. He would never say he went to the stream. Now, he didn't want to admit to his sister that he went to the stream. He only told her he went to a puddle. See, he didn't want his sister to know he'd been in the stream because she might have put two and two together before she even ratted on him, right? So he was saying, so now the problem he's got is if he went to the stream and nobody saw him, now then he would probably just slip away and never say he was in the stream. But he clearly knows people were around to see him in the park and maybe with her. So he's concerned that he's got to come up with an excuse for why he's in that damn stream because he was seen by somebody. And his lawyer admits that. He had been seen in this park. Not just the area, but actually in the park. It was a hangout for young people. But then he was seen leaving the park. Now, just because you were seen in the park and seen leaving the park doesn't mean you didn't go back to the park or go to a different area of the park or meet the person outside the park and go back into the park. Just that's all fairly meaningless, and it's coming from his attorney because I can't find any trial evidence on it. Then she says, he didn't deny that he went there. Well, according to this author, he kind of sort of did deny he was there. Okay. Now, later he did say he was in the stream. Okay. But he said but the author says that he denied seeing Cassie. that he may have, well, he denied having anything to do with Cassie. He just might have seen her among the groups of kids, but never thought about it. Then this is what he said. This is what Marvin says. In the documentary, when I got off work, I would always go to the park. Why? That's my first question. You're an 18-year-old guy, you just got off of work. What are you doing in the park? Now, here again is missing information. Were you out there smoking weed? Were you meeting up with your male friends? Were you playing basketball with your basketball tennis shoes? Were you trying to meet girls? Are you a predator? Then he says, he goes, always. And that's not just occasionally. I always go to the park. That's creepy to me, always. Then he says this. Oh, wait, sorry, wrong one. Here. And there was a girl there that he used to talk to, Linda. Okay, so he liked to talk to Linda. But that day I stopped by, I parked my car, I got out, I met Cassie Riley at the curb. He just confessed that he did see Cassie. And not only did he see Cassie, he knew who Cassie was, and he met her at the curb. So he lied. At one point he lied. Now we have some truth. I don't know when that truth came, because the truth, he's saying I met Cassie Riley. Now that he's out of prison, that's what he says. But when did he say that? When he was interviewed? Did he say that during, he didn't testify during trial. So interesting, now he says, oh yeah, I did meet Cassie Riley. And then he says, and he points in this thing, he points. So we walked down to where the basketball court is. Maybe because you play basketball there with your basketball shoes, but why are you going to the basketball court? Okay, is that where Linda is? Does she hang out there to watch the guys play? Does she play basketball? What's your point? So again, the information is so carefully edited and limited that I really question what this show was about, because it doesn't seem to be getting into the details of why he's innocent. It just throws these things out as if we're just supposed to go, oh, you see, and then he says, I wasn't probably there more than 8 minutes. Okay. So let's look at the evidence we have now. He goes to he shows up at that location all the time, and he wears his uniform so that people would see his car, his uniform, him talking to the young girls seems to be a thing. He does know Cassie. He actually met Cassie at the curb. He walked with Cassie through the park at least 8 minutes. The lawyer claims people saw him leave the park, but I don't know if that's even true. No clue. I don't know if they left and went down to the stream together. I don't know if she went down, he left and then he came back. I don't know any of that stuff. I have no clue. But what I do know is something about this story doesn't ring right. If I were in a court of law, if this was all I had, I would find him not guilty. Not because I don't think it's a good possibility he is, but because I don't like his story. I don't like his changing story about why he got wet, because and then he did admit he was in the stream. So he was in the stream that day, getting all his clothes wet. His story stinks. So why was he in the stream? And he was in the stream the same day he met Cassie at the curb. I'm going to say the chances of it being him, considering he's got 2 other possible sexual assaults already behind him, the chances of it being him are very, very high. But if I were in a court of law, I would say because of those tennis shoe prints, that we cannot identify that his tennis shoes match those tennis shoes, and I can't prove he was actually in the creek with Cassie, in spite of all the other suspicious circumstantial evidence and his past behaviors, I would find him not guilty. So all of you jackasses out there who say that, oh, the whole thing with the Karen Reed thing, I looked at the evidence. I would have found her guilty. But there are cases like this, and there's a number of reasons why you can find somebody, you can find somebody not guilty. In this particular case, I would find him not guilty, but I would suspect he was guilty. There's other cases where I would say he's not guilty because I absolutely think the evidence was garbage and did not prove that person guilty, and I do not believe they're guilty. There are some cases that are like that. So there's two possibilities. I mean, one that I think he's not guilty because he's not guilty because of evidence, not really. I just didn't find any evidence to prove the guy guilty, or I thought he was guilty, but the evidence wasn't strong enough, and I could not say so. I couldn't make him guilty, even though I think it's very, very possible. Because I do believe in the possibility of coincidences. I do. It does happen. So that other creepy dude, who clearly is a psychopathic sex predator, could have, for whatever reasons, he could have walked together with her, gone in the stream looking for his hubcap, walked out of there, and then Cassie met the other guy and walked in the stream and he killed her. Could that happen? Yes. And then he's scared crapless and he's all freaked out, and who knows what kind of guy he really is. So he could lie a lot anyway. So it's hard to tell if he's lying his way out of trouble or into trouble. I wouldn't know. I would find him not guilty, at least from the outside of this courtroom, because I just don't. Now with the Karen Reed trial, a tremendous amount of evidence. And although there's those who say, oh, you never watched, I knew what all the evidence was. And I made my determination based on the totality of evidence. The totality of evidence in this case is kind of minimal and lacks enough evidence for me to say absolutely he's guilty. That is reasonable doubt. So do I think he's guilty? Well, it sure could have been. And now that he has been arrested for what he's been arrested for, one has to question that he is actually maybe a psychopath and maybe a sex predator. Let me go to some of your comments here. Take a little rest here. Occam's razor. No, okay. Oh, this is a good point. Occam's razor is not what you do in court. When there is, I would say with Occam's razor, the chances of him being guilty are very high, but that's not a legal definition. That's just like when you look at things and say, oh, come on, realistically, the evidence is all over here. But there still has to be enough to legally put, because you're talking about, this is something else I tell people all the time on this channel. This is an educational channel. People go, how dare you even say something because you weren't in court? I know I'm not on a jury giving a verdict. I'm not giving a vote for a verdict. I am on an educational channel trying to help people understand things. It's two different entirely things. So if I talk about Occam's razor, I talk about it in the educational sense, in the logical sense, that generally speaking, Occam's razor is more likely to point to what happened than a whole bunch of convoluted nonsense that that's silly. So Occam's razor is different outside of the courtroom. This is an interesting point, Tina. Some have said that prison can make you a criminal. Maybe got a child porn in prison. Well, I shouldn't have, but hey, let me think about this. Generally speaking, a personality disorder is a personality disorder. Can a prison make you worse? Yes. Can your environment make you worse? Absolutely. I definitely believe that. I mean, there's reasons people end up in the mafia, end up in the cartels, end up being terrorists, those kind of things, because their environment worked along with their personality and made them worse. So could he have been there for 40 years and frustrated? He's a big enough guy. I guess he wasn't anybody's wife, but he's going to have sexual desires for 41 years in prison as well. But that his sexual desires would go toward children because he's in prison? No. I mean, nah. I mean, you don't, generally speaking, change that radically as far as what you find sexually stimulating. So I would say no. As far as that goes, it can make you a really worse person. That's true. And maybe it can create hatred in you that you don't trust anybody, you don't trust the law. But he didn't have that. Remember, this guy, when he gets out, so let me show you his wonderful wedding picture again, that you don't want to see. But anyway, that's So going back here, let me, oh no, I want to go to the other picture. Let me go to the other happy afterwards picture. Here we go. Okay, he gets out now. He is supposedly doing well. He's got a huge support system coming out. He's had all these people helping him, and I can tell you that at this point in time, after the Karen Reed fallout, from what I've gone through the last couple of days, I'd rather be in his shoes and having all these people going, "Oh, Pat, we think you're so wonderful. We love you. We love you." I love that. That would be much better than having everybody say nasty things to me all the time. So this guy's got all these people. He's doing this stuff that everybody's praising him for, and he's got the governor then getting him out, and then he gets out, and people are cheering and throwing balloons in the air, and he's getting married, he's getting an apartment without even having a job. Things are good. Things are good. And he says he doesn't seem to have any animosity, and this is something I point out quite often. When I see somebody get out of prison and they're not bitter, I usually think it's because they're guilty. Because this guy lost 41 years of his damn life. If you're not bitter over that, I'm a little wonder, and I'm not saying bitter to the point where you can't function or bitter to the point where you want to go and shoot everybody down. I'm just saying, when you're wronged, seriously wronged, there is, if you can just go, "Oh, it doesn't bother me at all." Unlikely. So that I've seen a lot of these guys get out of prison, deemed innocent by the Innocence Project, and they're like, "I don't hold any animosity toward anybody, blah, blah, blah." Turns out they're really guilty. So why would they hold animosity? They're like, "Dang, this worked out well for me. I really did do it, and now I'm out." So, and I always remember the case of David Vasquez, who was accused of being a serial killer, killing a woman in Arlington, Virginia. And he was imprisoned. I can't remember if he was on death row, but he was imprisoned. And he was a wonderful, wonderful, Joe Horgus, one of my favorite detectives of all time, said, "I don't think that guy did it." He said, "I think this guy's this cat burglar named Timothy Spencer." Turned out to be the first serial killer DNA case in the U.S. And it was proven it was Timothy Spencer, who was a cat burglar / serial killer. David Vasquez was just this poor schmuck who, I know the two detectives that interviewed him, and I worked another case where I had problems with the same detectives. So I did not trust them and I did not like them. And David Vasquez sued the crap out of Virginia, and he was very bitter. He was very angry because here was a guy living his normal life and he gets accused of sexual homicide and goes to prison, and he was not a happy camper. He got out and he got a lot of money. He's still pissed. And he's like, "It's all good. It's all good." So I always question when people are super happy after being wrongfully imprisoned for so many years. Yeah. So, his general nature would not have changed. General nature doesn't change. And, I've always said psychopaths, I believe, are established by the time they're 5 years old. Now, they're not necessarily violent psychopaths, but the personality disorder, I believe, is already entrenched. And then mixing that with the environment as how they're going to then express their psychopathy, it becomes another issue. If they become obsessed with violence, if they become, into the concept of killing women and sexually assaulting, and then they go that direction. Otherwise, they might find another way. I mean, if you happen to live in cartel territory in Sinaloa in Mexico, it's like, "Hey, great. Oh, you want me to be, I want to be a sicario, a hitman. You want me to be a sicario? Sí, señor." Because now I can do something, I get appreciated for it, and I get to kill people. Great stuff, But and then some people just go into, just they're manipulative. They live normal lives, but they're just, God help the people end up having to deal with them. Some of them go into different, types of careers that are useful to be psychopathic, and it's the way it works. I'm trying to go backwards here. um, Predators will be predators. Pretty much exactly true. Yes. Um, well, yeah. There. I mean, San Quentin. I mean, that's a rough place. I mean, sure, sure. But does it make you come out, get married, and then go and find child pornography? You know, yeah, not not probably not. I mean, yeah, I mean, the thing is, he can get out. First of all, he's got himself a wife. At least he gets sex. But he can get regular pornography. I mean, there's a massive amount of regular pornography that's even free, on the internet, and you can pretty much see just about everything that is horrific. And I mean, yes, there's a soft core on the net, but there's also extremely hardcore BDSM. There's rape fantasies. There's all kinds of horrible stuff, but that's all legal, and it's not children. If you go the children way, yeah, that's a big step. That's a big step. But I'd like to know. I would love to know if it's 13-year-old girls or whether it was actual children. Um, Let's say, oh, it's a security guard thing. Well, no, this is kind of funny because I've said many times that serial killers, the number one job is security guard, because it's an ego thing. Yes. Because you get to, especially if you get to wear a uniform and you can walk around like this. You can also pretend police officer, and a lot of serial killers really want to be policemen, and they can't pass the psych test, so they don't become law enforcement, but they love the uniform, and they like the power they get with it. And if they can get a gun on top of it, they really lucked out. And it's also the other reason that they get security guard jobs, simply because it's a very easy job to get. I mean, if the one thing, if you're an unemployed person, you can get a job as a security guard. For the most part, it's very, very possible. And armed security is a little harder, but there's so many people that need a security guard sitting at the desk in front of an office building or in the malls, or just so many of them driving around in those new, gated communities. There's tons of security guard jobs, and all you need to do is breathe. You don't need any skills. Just breathe. And again, I'll point out over and over again, one of my sons has been in security work for years, and he's no longer in it, but he was in security. My son-in-law is in federal security. So it's just two people in my family who are security guards. Because there are places where when you start out in that, you can move up, and one of my son worked for NASA. So he's a security guard. He did a lot of SWAT stuff for NASA. So he's kind of a high-level security guard. My son-in-law is also very high level in the government, going through all the security checks. He's a very high level, makes great money. So, so not all security guards are psychopaths. But there's a interesting portion of them who can be, because it's an easy job to get, and they like the power that they get out of the job. So, yeah. So see, Cinnamon. No, no, it wasn't Cinnamon. Cinnamon was a bouncer, though. That's another psychopath job. It wasn't Cinnamon. It was my other son. In case you're wondering why my son is called Cinnamon, he's not. But I went to Grok one day and I put in, what do you know about profiler Pat Brown? And they had me married to some guy I wasn't married to, and they had two of my children's names right, but then my third child was named Cinnamon. So we've been mocking him ever since and calling him Cinnamon. So poor Cinnamon. He's the most not cinnamon guy you'll ever meet. I mean, he's definitely. Oh yes, handyman is also the other one. Correct. Handyman. Top four. What are the top four? Security guard, bouncer, which is what Cinnamon was at one point. Handyman, because again, easy job to get, and you can put up little signs, and you can go and knock on people's doors, and you get to go in people's houses. So it's kind of nice. Of those three, I'm trying to think of the fourth. What's the fourth one? I mean, none of this, by the way. Some people are like, "Oh, Pat, do you have the statistics on that? Do you have research?" No, I don't. This is from my experience of working in the field, and it is, again, educational. So it's just to expand your brain and to understand how things work in real life, as opposed to being very overly academic about it. Oh, Oh, truck driver. Truck driver. Now, truck driver is long haul truck driver. Yeah. There is that project. The FBI has a serial killer project for truckers because there's a couple number of reasons why that's an attractive job. First of all, again, um, you don't need to have great skills to get it. You have to go through a program to learn how to drive the damn truck. But most guys like doing that. A few women. And then a lot of that's isolating work, so you don't have to get along with people, which really helps. Now, again, this is why I try to say it all the time because people always jump on you. I know truck drivers, and I know some great truck drivers. Being a truck driver doesn't make you a serial killer or a psychopath, and doesn't mean you're like antisocial or something. Because there's some really wonderful truck drivers, and they enjoy their work, and they like, they're on the CB. Is that what it's called now? It's been so long. CB, talking to each other, meeting at the truck stops, and it suits certain people. It really suits. They get to. I think it's again, if you're unemployed, it's a great job because it gives you a place to live, which is in your truck. You get to see the country. If you're on a lot of long haul stuff, you get to see the country, and it can be a really good job that will last you for a while. That can really benefit you, especially in this time where it's difficult to get work. So truck driver, they do tend to look for truck drivers. That's a job that's available because it is hard to drive long haul. I mean, it's exhausting. I couldn't do it. I mean, I can't stand driving on highways. So I'm like, oh, so bored in like an hour. But guys are better at doing things like that. But then again, you're by yourself. It's a relatively easy job to get. You go to truck stops where what they call them. What's the name of them? Forgot, not loungers. What are they called in truck stops? The prostitutes in truck stops. I forgot their name now, but they're there, and so then you can pay them to have sex, or they get in your cab and you disappear off with them, rape and murder them on the way. Don't pay them and dump them in a field, and then you're by the time they find that girl's body, you're so far gone, that they're never going to find you. What are they called? What are the truck stop girls called? I'm trying to remember. Lot lizards. Oh no, lot lizards. That's what it is. Lot lizards. Lot lizards. It's terrible, but it's a very dangerous job, and because you are going off times with a fellow in an isolated situation. A girl who works in at least a massage parlor is run by that has the boss is there, and the guy has to enter the massage parlor, has to be seen in the place. And then the girls are in different rooms, so they have sex with the guy, and the guy leaves. And that's a relatively safe place. You don't hear too many terrible stories about massage parlors, except for the one mass murderer guy that went off on him. But girls on the street, girls working truck stops and places like that, very dangerous job because you can get 20 truck drivers who are pretty nice guys who just want a little fun and pay the girl nicely and treat her well. And then you get number 21 and you end up dead in a field. So that's the way it goes. But everybody's talking about lot lizards now. Oh my God. Yes, failed police officers is true. I mean, these days, well, here's a scary thing though. In this day and age where there's a lot of hatred toward law enforcement, they're having a hell of a time getting anybody to join the police force anymore because who wants to be a police officer when people want to kill you for being a police officer, or they're going to accuse you of things and you're going to end up in prison for the next 10 years and lose your family. I mean, it's a scary profession to go into right now. It's always been a scary profession. My daughter is 20 years police force, and she'll probably hang in for another few. But when she joined, I mean, I always worried about her safety, being out on the street. Turned out I was more scared about the fact she likes to drive really fast. She's always a lead chase. So I was always worried about that. And when she survived those years and then she became a detective, so I was like, oh, thank God, she's getting off the street. But I accepted the dangers of the job in general when she went into it. I knew, you never know what could go wrong. But now I would, if my daughter said now she wanted to join the police force, I'd tell her she's insane. I say, she don't want to do that because of the attitude from the public these days. And because the attitude of the public is so poor, people don't want to join. Guess who they're hiring? Now they're going to say, dude, you don't have to be a security guard. You can be a police officer, because they're going to be desperate enough to hire people that they would never have hired before. They're going to lower those standards. And then when you're going to get worse law enforcement. and you're going to get some of those psychos. I mean, there's always been a few psychopathic police officers. I'm not detectives, but police officers. I mean, that's true because the job does draw in a lot of people who love power and control, a uniform and a gun. There's no way around that. That's what the job entails a lot of. So you do get that anyway. But going through the whole process and the psych exam, you hope you weed out the majority of those. You get a few little, geez, how'd that guy get through? That'll happen because, there have been serial killers who are police officers. But when you start lowering the standards, it's not going to be the rare bad apple. You look in that barrel and you go, oh my God, what the hell is in here? And then you wonder why everything gets even worse. So it's very unfortunate. So I don't know what's going to happen with all that, but yeah. Let me see what other comments you have before I call it for a night. Beck says, I came in late and missed the whole story. Yeah, that does happen. Sorry, Beck. Yeah, got to pay attention to those messages that come in. There is very little about it. This is the links are in the message. I gave you the links to the documentary, and that's all there really is. I mean, it's very, very. It's interesting that there's so little. I mean, this guy was like a poster boy for this California Innocence Project. I mean, they worked. They kept saying how great he was and did this documentary, and yet they really didn't work hard to convince anybody of a lot of this details that I've just talked about in the show. And now that he's been arrested, there's not one peep out of them. They should be defending this guy, saying, "Hey, the police are railroading him or something," but there's not a peep. So I wonder what they know. And I really don't see. I don't blame them. I mean, I don't like the Innocence Project in general because I think they're not the Innocence Project. I think they're a project that wants to find any way they can to get people out of prison to blame the government. I think that's what the whole thing is about. They look for every technicality, which if you want to call it the technicality project or we get people out of prison project, if the government screws up project, fine. But don't claim they're innocent when they're not. That bothers me when you're misinforming people, letting people think that all these poor guys have gone to prison. They've been railroaded into prison and they've ruined their lives when they were innocent. And that's just not true. Now, a few of them, yes, but most of them, no. So I don't like they're disingenuous. I don't like people who don't tell the truth. And I think a lot of the times the Innocence Project does not tell the truth. Now, I think there are people that work with the Innocence Project who innocently believe that the person is innocent. And I think with this case, I kind of get why they might think he was innocent because I don't know. Maybe there's something I don't know that happened in that court of law. And if I were in there, I go, oh my God, this is what they left out of everything. Now I would have found him guilty. That's possibly true because there's so little information out there. I may be getting a really watered down version of the evidence. And therefore, that's why sitting here, I'm like, I don't know. It looks guilty, but if I were with the evidence I know now, at this moment in time, which is tiny, I wouldn't have found him guilty if I were on a jury. But maybe if I saw all the evidence, I would say, good Lord, this guy's guilty. I would find him. I would not find him not guilty. But I don't know because the evidence is so hidden in this case. So I don't know the people that are on the Innocence Project. Do they know that evidence? Were they aware of everything and actually know he's guilty and are saying he's not guilty? If that's true, you're a bunch of liars. But if you actually don't have that information and you have just what I have and you believe that he maybe didn't do it, and maybe if you talk to him in person, he comes across really well on the show. I mean, he's very likable. I mean, he says, if I met him, I'd probably like him. And although somebody said that they did know him and he creeped him out, but that's just somebody out on the internet. But I might think he's a nice enough guy and say, hey, you can come work for me, or if you've got some skills, I'll hire you. I might do that because it didn't come across, in my opinion, creepy during the show. But I was bothered by the fact, this story that he told about seeing Cassie. That was the thing that sent up that red flag for me, along with the shoe issue and the missing information. So I personally would not be willing to go out in the public and say he's innocent when I don't know that. I would never do that. So those people did it for the Innocence Project. Maybe they're just naive. Maybe they're easily misled. Maybe they don't want to ask the questions they should ask. Maybe they'll ignore evidence. And that's what I see happens a lot with lay people. They ignore evidence, which is pretty overpowering because they want to believe this. And so maybe now they've woken up and they looked at the, go on the internet. I say look at the paper, but nobody does. But get on the internet and say, oh my God, not Marvin. Oh my God, they just said he got around. Oh my God. And now, if that's true, we're idiots. So if I were them, I'd be hiding too, because it's, it's not what you want people to find out if it's true. The guy you got out of prison, so those dang hubcaps always flying off in a ditch. See, there's not even any information about that dang hubcap thing. Where if I were doing this, if I were trying to prove him innocent, I would want to have all the information on the hubcap issue. Did he only have 3 hubcaps? How long had he only had 3 hubcaps? Did they search the thing for the hubcap? If he saw the hubcap go into the stream, why isn't the hubcap there? I don't, did he actually buy the car and didn't have hubcaps? The one hubcap when he bought it, he's just lying like a dog. But that information has been kept from us, so we don't know. This is very true, Beck. Innocence Project acts like civilian juries. Focus on one piece they don't understand instead of the totality of the case. And that's what I keep saying over and over again. That is the problem. It's the totality of the evidence. Now, there are sometimes when there's enough of a gap in the evidence with what I only know about that's on the internet about his case. The totality of the evidence isn't strong enough for me to find him guilty in a court of law at this point in time. Because I need to know a lot more. If somebody saw him throwing away his tennis shoes in a bin, well, that might put me over the edge, to guilty. But I don't. If somebody saw him, there might be. Let's say there were a photo of him in those exact tennis shoes that were on his feet. The tennis shoes are on his house, but the tennis shoes are on his feet, the same exact kind of tennis shoes, and they're on his feet in a photo that was taken just a few weeks ago, a few weeks before the crime. Would that be enough? Would that add to the totality of the evidence to say, yeah, this guy did? And that all stuff has to be examined, but focusing on one thing you don't understand and just running off with it and saying, okay, therefore they didn't do it. No, that's not the way it's supposed to work. And and also, I think a lot of people got involved in the Innocence Project. They're out there to prove something to the world. And a lot of them do not like our criminal justice system. They think it's unfair and mean and all that stuff. They believe in there's a high level of corruption and everybody's being railroaded. They come in with a concept that this is true. And if there are occasions when it can be true. I've worked on cases where I've said this person was corrupt, who was in law enforcement. I've said that because again, we don't have 100% perfection in law enforcement. And and then when you get to the politicians in law enforcement, they get even more corrupt. They can be. In other words, so there's a small bundle, but you have to not go in with the concept that I'm going to prove that the law enforcement is corrupt. Therefore, I'm going to look at this case as everything the police do and everything the prosecution does is corrupt. That's an agenda. That's not looking at the evidence. And so that's a lot of time. I think the Innocence Project, that's what they go into. It's run by defense attorneys. And defense attorney's job is to disprove the government's case by any means they can, which I think is kind of despicable. I think you want to disprove the case because the person is innocent and they shouldn't be found guilty if they're innocent. So I have no problem with the defense attorney defending his client, his innocent client, at all. Now, if his client's guilty, I don't have any problem with them holding the toes of the government to the fire to do their job properly. But I do object to them lying out there, spreading stories, getting in the media, doing all the stuff that we see on some of these cases so that the jury will be jury will be simply unable to come to a proper verdict because, along with their lack of training, they've had so much propaganda that they don't even know what's going on. That's not right to me. So the Innocence Project, yes, I'm all for you. If you really have an innocent fella or woman who shouldn't be in prison because truly they're innocent, for God's sakes, do whatever you can to get them out. I'm all for that. But I lost faith and trust in the Innocence Project because, as I've always pointed out, once you lie, I don't trust you anymore. And they lie. And I've caught them in the lies over and over again. So if you're going to lie, I can't trust you as an organization. So that's my problem with the Innocence Project. So, Lord, that is one way to get out of jury service. If they're being prosecuted, they must be guilty. There are easy ways to get out of jury duty. There really are. And that's one of the jokes out there, is that if you can't get out of jury duty, you're not very smart. There are a lot of ways. And some people go to jury duty because they're honorable and they want to do their citizens' duty. So they're good people. There are other people who go because they want the excitement. They want to be in a reality show. There's other people who want to go there because of their agenda. So it's very hard that's where I believe in a professional jury, again, that you can see these things because you're looking at evidence and not whether you like or dislike the defendant or like or dislike the victim. Just, it could be either way. But yeah, it's easy to get out of jury duty. I mean, I will never be on a jury, and that's just, I don't even have to work at it. What do you do, ma'am? I'm a criminal profiler. Thanked and excused. I'm out the door. So I just don't like to waste my time going there and having to sit there all day long just so I can be thanked and excused. It annoys the heck out of me. But yeah. I think the retrying thing, we have a problem now with the CIUs. That's the CU. What the hell are they called? I always forget the name of them. Let me look at them again. That's the new thing that's been going on, which I think is absolutely despicable. They are what are they called? What are they called? Shoot. Why do I not? Okay, I think I have it over here. I have a block against this. Where is it called? What is it called? Okay, prosecutor's office. Called CUIs. CUIs? Oh, how did I just lose this thing? I had it there. Conviction Integrity Unit. And that's the new thing, which the Innocence Project is heavily involved with. They're popping up in all the different prosecutors' offices across the United States. And so, especially progressive prosecutors who want to right the wrongs of racial prejudice in the system, and they're odd prosecutors in the fact that they're not just there to prosecute guilty people; they're there to balance out things, which is not what you're supposed to be there for. But anyway, what the Innocence Project is, works with them. They're almost like the prosecutor almost turns into a defense attorney. So the Innocence Project comes in and says, well, this person's really innocent, and they will work. And sometimes they will just take the case and dump it, and the guy will just walk out of prison, no appeal and no proof. They can just simply say, we decided they shouldn't have been found guilty to begin with. They're the new prosecutor, because the old prosecutor found them guilty, but the new prosecutor can win political points with the citizenry. And so now you don't even have to have a jury. So all these people want jury systems. They don't have a problem with people just walking out of prison because one prosecutor says so. So it's a whole weird thing. It's like, it doesn't make any sense, but that's the way it is. So yeah. Oof. So frustrating. I'm telling the courts I watch Pat Brown from now on to get out of jury duty. Very wise move, yes. And because according to everybody, I am a shill for the prosecution in every single trial. And so therefore, they won't like me. Oh my God. Pat isn't our peer. Maybe not. Oh my God, that's funny. But yeah, that's a whole nother thing. And that's why I did the 5-part series on the jury system. And it's frustrating because I say it's most people who are commenting don't even watch the video. They're just there to attack, and because that's what they're there for. And I want people to watch the video because maybe I should have I could have just eliminated the comments on there. I didn't, I've never done that before. That might be worth doing. I've never stopped the comments on any of my shows because I like people to be able to talk to me occasionally. I mean, I try to respond to people when I see an interesting comment come in on YouTube. Sometimes it gets overwhelming because there's, you got 600 comments or 6,000 comments. You're like, yeah, I can't look at all this crap. But sometimes I see things come in and I'm like, oh, that's a good comment. Somebody asked a good question. But I've never, ever stopped the comments. And I don't know. I think you could do it on just a single video. So maybe I should have done that. Maybe I'll go back and do it. I don't know. It's exhausting just to even, because I come in on my, it's called YouTube. I can't remember what it's called. YouTube Studio. YouTube Studio is where all my information for YouTube comes in, and they roll in, the comments roll in, and then you're sitting there, and it's like, Pat Brown, you're an ass, it's like, Pat Brown, you're stupid, Pat Brown, you're a liar, Pat Brown, it gets exhausting, and I feel like it sets. The idea was to have a good if I'm going to leave the comments open, is to have a good discussion, not to have a bunch of people being nasty and all that stuff. So unfortunately, people can't be civil these days. It's a big problem in society. So it's not just YouTube. It's everywhere. We have a problem with people being civil when people have differing opinions. And people are always going to have differing opinions. And I would hate to eliminate all my friends and family because they have a different political opinion, different religious opinion, different opinion on movies or food, whatever the heck their opinion is different on. I don't want to be a kind of person who can't go, oh, that's interesting, and learn something from that person and still be friends. If I can't do that, I got a problem. And I think a lot of people have this problem today because I've seen so much viciousness over just people just ruining their relationships with so many people because they don't agree with them. And the people that come in and say, well, Pat, I used to respect you and I loved your channel, but now I know you're, but now that you've come down, you have this conclusion that the jury got it wrong with the Karen Reed case. I want nothing to do with you anymore. It's like one opinion that's different, wow, and that does it. So God help your husband or wife or whoever you're with, because, one day, maybe when they say, you made this food for dinner, I'm done with you. Person says one wrong word, you're gone. It's like, good Lord. So it's just crazy. Oh, thank you, Liz. I appreciate that. I'm glad you learned something. You don't always have to agree with me, but I do want you to learn because that's why I do this show. That's it. I've never done a show because it's going to make me money. Don't mind getting it because it keeps but it keeps if you're going to work full time on YouTube, you got to earn a living because you can't do something else if you're doing this. So yes, of course, one wants to earn enough to be able to survive. But I don't do shows because I know that's going to make me money. I'll do 100 shows on that because I'm going to get 100 shows worth of money on the Karen Reed case. I don't do that kind of stuff. And it limits my income, but I'm okay with that. I'm not that greedy. So I'm good with that. But I want people to learn. Otherwise, I just don't even want to I don't want to do this show if it's just a gossip channel or I don't know. Just not what I want to do. So I don't want to, I don't mind being entertaining, but I'm not here to entertain, shall we say. You pretty much agree so far. Well, next week when still want you to be my friend. No. Felicity says, occasionally I don't agree with you, but that doesn't mean you can't come to a different conclusion with the same evidence. Yes and no. So the problem is in theory, and I point this out in theory, that as a profiler, I usually find that if you have enough evidence, it should lead you to one conclusion. It shouldn't be two opposite conclusions. I mean, because that would mean the evidence isn't very strong. Okay, so how would you come to two different conclusions if the evidence is strong enough? So that shouldn't happen. But that a person can not come to the best conclusion based on evidence may be because they lack training, or because there is some bias that comes in, or their brain just didn't function on that one. I mean, I can say there might be a case out there which I didn't see right, and then maybe later on I'll relook at the case. I think, wow, how did I miss that? How did I not understand that? How did I not put two and two together properly? So I think that the reason you have reasonable doubt is because the whole point of it is that when we lay out the evidence, anybody who understands the evidence should come to the same conclusion. That's how you have no reasonable doubt and you convict somebody. So if the evidence is extremely weak, then the problem is you can't come to a very good conclusion, because there's enough missing where you're like, I'm going to guess. Guessing isn't good enough. I would guess from what I know here and now, he's likely, and I use the word likely, to be the guy who committed the crime. Likely, but I wouldn't find him guilty with what I know now, because maybe he was another creepy dude. Maybe he's just a lying jerk. I don't know. Because I just don't have enough. But if there was enough evidence, then if I were on a professional jury, I would expect all those people on the professional jury to be able to come up with that same conclusion. If the jury is split in half and half on a professional jury, now we have seen in the Reed case that we have had professionals believe she's innocent. We've had professionals believe she's guilty. And why is that? I'm just going to say this. I honestly think, because I've seen what their whole issue is, that the police didn't do a great investigation. And they've done tons and tons of videos. And I kind of believe that the issue is the audience. The audience they know is going toward innocence, and therefore they don't want the audience to be pissed off at them, hate them. So what they do is talk about, oh, they didn't do this right, the prosecution wasn't good, and there's, the police didn't do blah, 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 which is why I did the five-part video, because one of the parts is things people don't understand, that a police department isn't always perfect. And in the middle of a blizzard, you get people who don't do the best that they might be able to do under another circumstance. And some of the times they just don't understand how things work. So they think that they're missing, because they have this lack of evidence in this one spot, therefore the person, you can't find them guilty. That's not true, because if the totality of the evidence is strong enough to overcome that one jerk of a police officer, then it's enough to overcome that. But I think there's some professionals been out here who know where the sympathies lie, because it's been a very big campaign, the Free Karen Reed campaign, that they don't want it to be trashed. So they will lean toward that direction. And I know that from the media, because I know there's cases where I've seen people go on and I'm like, I don't think you really believe that. But they're saying what the media wants them to say. And they sometimes are very clever about how they go around the thing. They might say, for example, in the Madeleine McCann case, well, children, that's an age where children can easily be kidnapped. Well, that's true, but it doesn't have anything to do with the case particularly. You can say that and get away with it and make it look like you're considering Madeleine McCann was abducted, because you don't want to say you don't think she was abducted, because that'll get you kicked off of television. Believe you me. So if Pat Brown wants to be on television, I better make it go that direction. It has to go toward a child abduction, or I'm not going to be on. So I could do shows and carefully go around so I could still make money. So I'm not saying all professionals do this. There may be professionals out there who really truly believe she's innocent or there's reasonable doubt because whatever. So I'm not saying that they're wrong, but I also think sometimes there's an agenda behind things. And if we were in a court of law, without all the hoopla, without all the propaganda, without all the pressure, the bullying, all that stuff. If there were 5 of us professionals in a court like that, or 7, sitting there without any of the nonsense and being presented with the evidence, I would think that the majority of the time, if there was enough evidence to convict, all of us would find for conviction. If the evidence was weak, we would all find reasonable doubt. And there might be that one weirdo that doesn't go along with the program. You know what I mean? So I would go with a majority, or 6 out of 7, or 4 out of 5. That's what I would go with. I hate this. It has to be unanimous. I think that's nonsense because I've never seen or almost never see 12 people be unanimous about anything. So it's really weighted in for the defendant. It's weighted. I mean, the defense has so much going for them going into it. It's a lot of cases. It would be, if the case isn't open and shut. And when I say open and shut, I mean, the guy was a gang banger and he shot 2 people from the other gang in the middle of the street. And there's videos of him shooting them down, and nobody likes this guy, and he's got a long history. And the jury's like, yeah, whatever, he's guilty, because it'll be so obvious. And most cases that go to court, they go to court because the guy is guilty. That's why the police have enough evidence to have them arrested and then go to prosecution. The prosecutor says, look, I want my 99% win rate, and I'm not going to take a case to court that's weak. So those cases just don't go to court. So there is no jury issue with that because it just never show up in court. A lot of cases just get settled out of court, with plea deals and stuff like that, or they're just dumped, and then the guy goes to commit some more crimes. And when he commits one that they got enough evidence on, they finally put that piece of crap away. But a lot of times it's by the time the ones that go to court are not as hard to figure out. But when you get big cases where you can get in top lawyers like Jose Baez, when you get massive media involved, when you can get Facebook groups and turtle boys to go out there and basically distribute a massive amount of propaganda, then you start losing the ability to have this be a properly handled trial with a proper, situation where the evidence can simply be presented and people can quietly and peacefully make their determination. And hopefully, I prefer a professional jury who understands what the evidence means. And I would think, wouldn't be perfect, but I think that the success rate of a proper verdict would be way, way higher than it is now. So that's my thoughts. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I didn't want to go back to Karen Ray. I never want to hear her name again, actually. I'm so tired and exhausted from the whole thing. It's just very annoying because, I don't care whether people seem to think I have some, a hatred of her. I've heard that. Oh, you hate her. I don't hate her. I don't know her. I didn't particularly like her in a documentary, but I don't have to hate her like a defendant. That is meaningless to me when it comes down to evidence, because that's what I'm supposed to be looking at. You can be a piece of crap but didn't do the crime, and you can look like the sweetest, nicest person in the world and did do the crime. So I don't care about that. The only reason I look at personality and statement analysis is because when you say things like my keys went in a puddle and then you change it to my my hubcap went in the stream where the girl got killed, I'm concerned about your changing story. I'm concerned about why you're saying what you're saying. That is not whether I like you or not. I don't even the fact that he had a bad past and he'd had these other 2, possible sexual assaults on his record. Even that doesn't prove he did it, because you can have 2 rapists in the same area. It's that's not unusual. So just because he could have raped him, he could have raped somebody the week before and be guilty of that crime, but not be guilty of this crime. So that's what, when you do enough work and profiling, you get to be way more objective and not get all emotionally involved and jump onto somebody's agenda and all this kind of stuff, theoretically. And but I think fortunately people who are in the media, television and YouTube, often will go with whatever agenda is the popular agenda. And that's how you make a living. So anyway, thank you guys for being here. And so this was nice. And I'll see you for the hangout. Those of you who are patrons, and if you want to be a patron and be at the live shows, please click on the link below. And otherwise, subscribe to the channel. Keep this thing going. And have a good week, Pat, Mac the cat, and everyone. Mac will be here soon, looking for his dinner, I'm sure. So yeah. So anyway, see you Wednesday or Thursday, depending on what what great things I have to do on either one of those days. And I will see you then. And meanwhile, everybody be pleasant, be nice people. That's a better way to be. Bye-bye.